Hi, my name is Jason Goodrow, and I'm going to be speaking to you about Beyond Server Virtualization with vCloud Director. Again, my name is Jason, and I have 23 years of industry experience. I've been with Advisix Technologies for about 7 months, and prior to that, I worked for a large insurance company, a Fortune 250 company. And I'm going to be walking you through the experience I had with vCloud Director and how we leveraged it to enable our business. Now, I hold certifications for VCP in data center virtualization and desktop. I'm also a CCSK, and I've been nominated as a 2013 vExpert. Advisix Technologies has been around for about 37 years. One thing that we pride ourselves on is our customer loyalty. We have a 98% loyalty rating. And what we believe in is making sure that we build relationships with our customers, that we understand their business problems, and that we work closely with them to come up with solutions. Advisix is now a Rolta company, and we can work with the full range of IT solutions, from business applications and middleware, all the way down to infrastructure applications, storage, networking, and management tools. Advisix Technologies is a key partner with VMware. In 2010, we won Infrastructure Partner of the Year. We have several certifications and accreditations. We have 27 VCPs and 38 VTSPs. We are also a key lighthouse partner for VMware Cloud Hosting Services, the VCHS, one of the few in the nation. The VMware Cloud Hosting Services is supposed to be going GA in the fall, and will give you the capability of leveraging VMware's own public cloud capabilities. So one thing I want to ask is, how many of you have business users leveraging cloud resources? So even if you don't think you have a lot of users using cloud resources, these are some startling statistics that came from Gigamon just a few weeks ago. Now, Netcraft states that websites hosted in Amazon soared 71% in the last 9 months, and that's went from 6.8 million to 11.6 million. Some amazing numbers right there. And just over a year ago, Accenture had stated that they believe AWS Cloud Services has over 450,000 physical servers. Just a mind-boggling number of how much resources is backing their clouds. Additionally, a full 1/3 of all Internet users touched an AWS-based server at least once a day. And 1% of all consumer traffic move into and out of AWS Cloud. Most people are estimating that AWS is a $2 billion a year business. So it is having an amazing amount of growth, and this is just Amazon. There are several other key cloud partners out there. So even though you might not think you have users using cloud services, you'll probably be surprised to know that you have shadow IT in your organization. Now, some of the key problems that businesses are facing are IT sprawl, which keeps 70% of IT professionals captive in operations and maintenance. There's been a 20% reduction in IT staffing since 2008. And I know this myself. The organization I worked with had an 18% reduction. A lot of it had to do with just attrition, not replacing bodies. But we did have several layoffs as well. Traditional IT deployments are still too slow. Even though we've virtualized, it still takes us days to get things done. And our business partners expect to provide the same type of end-user experience they gain on the Internet. So the CFO of the organization I worked with came to me and stated that, the experience I expect when our enrollees come to our company is the same type of experience that I gain when I go to Amazon. And he wasn't talking about Amazon's web services. What he was talking about is when he went to Amazon to the retail side and he wanted to buy something. So if he wanted to buy a book or even some other type of product from one of their partner retailers, he said, Amazon's always available. If I want to go at lunchtime and research a book, I can. If I want to look for athletic equipment after the kids go to bed, I always know it's available. And our systems need to be available all the time as well, the way IT has changed. Our enrollment systems for our business users need to be available 24/7. Our customers expect to be able to hit our website and use the services that they need to when they need to. We can no longer have outages at night or on the weekend. It has to be available all the time. We're still on the journey moving towards the cloud. So initially, we had physical servers, and they would take months to deploy, usually 6 to 8 weeks for acquisition. Then you had rack and stack, cabling, networking, setting up backups, and then the installation of the software and other components. We were able to move that down to days with consolidation and virtualization. So even though we were able to virtualize, and it doesn't take too long to actually right-click on a VMware template and deploy a server, there was still a lot of structure around when you could deploy a server, a lot of change control mechanisms, a lot of red tape we had to go through. And now what we're trying to look for is a more agile way to enable our business partners to be able to spin up and deploy virtual machines for themselves, especially in certain regions of the environment. Now, VMware's definition of vCloud is VMware's solution for cloud computing that enables delivery of infrastructure as a service. And I want to stress that. Infrastructure as a service. It's no longer just executing tasks. It's taking the infrastructure and using it as a service so you can be a better key partner with your business partner, with your business. You become more agile, more flexible, and you're able to enable them to get products to market quicker. And what we're going to be talking about is the vCloud suite. The piece I'm going to be most directly talking about is going to be vCloud Director, and also Operation Manager and vCenter Chargeback. So some of the key benefits you're going to see is increased business agility by empowering developers to self-deploy with a click of the button. Infrastructure staff spends less time provisioning machines, and you focus on business innovation. Also, you can leverage this time to do a lot more upgrades to the underlying infrastructure, key components, put in enhanced features. And last, the nice thing is you can leverage your existing IT investments, your current infrastructure, but you make it much more flexible, and you make it much more elastic. Now I want to go over some key components of a virtual data center. A provider VDC is a logical grouping of compute and storage resources. This is the pooling of the resources from your virtual center. It comes up and the providers have these pools available. Now you have organizational VDCs, which are used to partition and allocate resources to the different organizations. And last, the organizations are really the workspaces owned by an IT business partner that provides them with the ability to create application containers, they're called vApps, and self-deploy these virtual machines. So the first thing we're going to look at is sort of the service levels that you can work with. So the first, provide a service level. I put service level expectation because I like to consider them as expectations, not as agreements, is the gold service level expectation. And within here, you might have reserve pools. So all the resources that you give a tenant is reserved. They're guaranteed those resources. The resource guarantee is 100%. They may have a high restart order. This region actually may be managed. So IT operations might manage this region. It might not be something where they can deploy VMs themselves. And there might be custom packages of VMs, so they can choose how much memory, how much CPU, and what type of storage that they want. You might have a silver SLE, which is an allocation pool that bursts, so you only reserve a certain amount. In this case, maybe 50%. The other 50% can be overcommitted. You might have a normal restart order here. This could be your consumer self-service area. And you might have standardized VM templates. So you might have a small VM, a medium VM, and a large VM offering. And last, you have your bronze. Now, these are totally overcommitted, an on-demand, pay-as-you-go type service, a restart order of low, again, consumer self-service with the standard packages. Now, the way the pooling works is you can make either a cluster or resource pools based off of service level expectations. So here you're going to see that we have a gold cluster. And that gold cluster has the latest generation servers, 4 physical processor, 8 cores, 500 gigabytes of memory, and tier 1 storage. Where we might have a secondary cluster, that's for our silver and bronze cluster, which is the last generation servers, Gen 6 and Gen 7 HP ProLiant servers, 4 physical processors again, but here we only have the 4 and 6 core processors and only 256 gigabyte of memory. And we might only make tier 2 and maybe tier 3 storage available. Now, when you've allocated these out to your provider VDCs, you're going to have groupings of these allocations. So you'll have a gold provider VDC, a silver provider VDC, and a bronze provider VDC. And as you can see here on the diagram, we have 400,000 megahertz of CPU and 2 million megabytes of memory, and that's how it's actually allocated in the vCloud Director interface. And then you partition off some of those resources to your different organizations. So here we've got an example of the sales organization. And the sales organization has 80,000 megahertz of CPU and 124,000 megabytes of memory for gold. Then if you go all the way down to bronze, they have 60,000 megahertz of CPU and 80,000 megabytes of memory. So the organization can work within those constraints. And the nice thing is that they have to work in those constraints. If they start to over-allocate or oversubscribe that area, then the only person it affects is that organization. It is truly a multi-tenant environment. So if they overcommit their resource pool, it is overcommitting just that organization and not other organizations. The sales organization would have to go back to their IT host providers and ask for more resources if they need to consume more resources and they want to build out more VMs. And then the application placement can be done by the IT organizational owners. So they can decide which goes where. They can put their enrollment systems, like I talked about earlier, into their gold organization because they have to be available. They can have their claims in CRM and silver and the statement application in bronze. So they get to decide where it goes. But you probably want to provide them with some type of direction. So one thing that I developed was a heat map to give some structure around where they should have placements for their applications. So enterprise applications should be in gold and in the DMZ. Web applications, because they are so tightly tied with so many type of applications, can be up and down the entire stack. Batch applications could be silver down. Databases, gold, silver, and the DMZ. And vendor applications would be relegated to silver, bronze, and off-site hosting. One of the most important parts, though, is ensuring that you have responsible consumption. You need to have cost visibility either by chargeback or showback. Projects become much more cost-aware of infrastructure during the application development lifecycle, which makes people a lot more responsible around costs and helps lower the capital expense. So one way to think about it, you got 2 pictures of cars here. Say you went to the Ford dealership and you had a choice between a Ford Focus and a Ford Mustang. If they were the same price, most people are going to go for that Ford Mustang. It's going to be the same with your infrastructure resources. If you have gold, silver, and bronze at the same price, everybody's going to go for gold. You have better resources, you have more resources, probably better performance, and better SLA guarantees. You need to make sure that you price things reasonably for your consumers. And right here I've got pricing for behaviors. So you want to encourage behaviors. So the one thing that I did in my pricing models, and behind this you can't actually see it because we're in a slide deck, but there's a spreadsheet that actually details out all of the pricing for infrastructure components around the server, licensing, even TAM costs. I've got upcharges for certain things like off-site replication, increased backup duration. So what you do is you upcharge for all these features, but you're very clear on what your cost accountability is, so that your business knows that you're not just fabricating costs. These are the actual costs of running the business. The one area that we did do a flat fee because we wanted to make sure we encouraged people not to do it was with the gold custom VM. This was a very large cost. We wanted to make sure that we encouraged the behavior, that we wanted to try to keep up with the standard templates we had available. So our philosophy is that we wanted to make sure we had phoenixes, not snowflakes. And if you haven't heard the analogy, you want to have services that are phoenixes. So if they're burnt to ashes, they can rise up from those ashes and be reborn. Whereas snowflakes, individual snowflakes, are all individual and unique. They're unique and beautiful, but they're hard to recreate. Even if you don't use vCloud Director to come up with a very dynamic service level type of offering, if you just use it in your development regions, and most corporate infrastructures have 60% of the infrastructure tied up just in development and acceptance regions, then what you could do is just gain a lot more agility by allowing your developers to spin up VMs in the development regions. This will make your company much more agile and help you be able to push applications and products out to the market much quicker. So you would still have production as traditional IT, or even your acceptance region if you want to make sure that your acceptance or your testing region is the same as production, but have that cloud type of model within the development. Now I wanted to talk about a little bit about utility computing. And Nicholas Carr has a great book. It's called The Big Switch. And he came out and theorized that we were going to have these massive data centers, much like the electric companies, where everybody was going to migrate to because the cost would be cheaper. That computing would be much more like a utility than it is from the traditional computing type of environments we've been used to. And I think we've seen costs come down. Amazon keeps dropping their costs. But one thing that is different when you're thinking about infrastructure, especially infrastructure as a service and a utility model, is that we are not of the mindset of using our servers like a utility. We don't shut them down at the end of the day. There's not many people that go at the end of the day before they go home shut down their print servers or their batch servers or their email servers. Servers are usually left running all the time. And when you're in a metered environment, that's costly. If you're at home with electricity, when you're leaving your living room to go to bed at night, you're going to shut off your TV, your lights, and maybe your AC. You don't do that with your servers. You leave your servers running all the time. There are great use cases for using the utility type model. Say you have a company that's very seasonal. You have a lot of bursting at end of quarter or at Christmas time. To expand out your data center and have a lot of equipment sitting there dormant for most of the year isn't really cost effective. However, for most people, they don't run a seasonal type of infrastructure. It's great in retail. Another area where it could be very beneficial is also DR. Why buy a whole bunch of DR equipment that just sits there all year round when you could use a cloud provider to host cloud services for you for when you need to run your DR process, your DRE. But if you do want to use a cloud provider, say even something like VMware's new cloud hosting services, which is coming out this fall, vCloud Director allows you to port applications between a cloud provider and also existing data centers. You could even do it to a colo data center. Now, I want to be clear about this. There is no magic bursting like has been talked about quite a bit. If you have a sizable VM, you are still bound to the laws of physics. It takes a while to move VMs in between data centers or even cloud providers. It's great for moving templates and spinning up templates, but to actually move a VM that's like 800 gig from one site to another site takes a long time, and it takes downtime. When you use vCloud Director, the VM has to be down to be able to move it. When you go to the VMware Cloud Hosting Services, if you have a very large VM, what they're going to do is ship you a NAS device to load that VM up, and then you'll move it back to, send it to them, and they'll load it up in their cloud hosting services. So the portability is great, and you can utilize it, but right now it's actually more effective for when you're actually using a template in a secondary site. Some key considerations to think about when you're going to a cloud provider, especially a public cloud provider. Do your security practices meet your industry regulation compliance? You know, does the hosting provider work with SOX regulations or HIPAA regulations? Can they guarantee location of data, especially if you're in an industry where you could have litigation holds or e-discoveries? If they can't guarantee the location of data, even down to the disk, that might become a problem when you are faced with any type of legal constraint. Are their systems reliable? And do their contracts guarantee uptime? As you can see from the picture right next to us with the Windows Azure, this was just from a couple of weeks ago, almost every one of their environments had degraded services. So what happens in the event that you do have degraded services? Or most importantly, what is the liability if their systems go down? Additionally, are you comfortable federating your Active Directory security information? Your security needs to be out in the public cloud. Otherwise, a lot of your applications aren't going to work. So you need to federate most of the time your Active Directory and your security. What happens in a suspension of service? If the cloud provider goes away, if it's a small provider and it goes away, how long do you have to get your data back? How do you get it back? If you have large VMs out in a cloud provider, how do you get that back? So the key success factors for moving beyond server virtualization into this new business view, especially with the private cloud, I think is transparency of infrastructure costs. It creates budget accountability for infrastructure-related costs to IT business projects. Expanding automation capabilities so that you can provision quicker. It helps you develop strong resource capacity management and modeling practices so that you have more elasticity in the environment and you can predict where things are going. So when I did work for that large insurance company, we did roll this solution out. And typically in the application managed service space, you don't get a lot of compliments. Infrastructure is more relegated to, the area of, yeah, we have to deal with infrastructure. They're slow. They never get us what we want. Well, the AVP of the application managed services for the company that I had worked for had stated in an email that this was the best solution Operation had ever delivered to them, and we were pretty proud of that. So before I move into the Advisix services, are there any questions? So some of the services we provide are product demonstrations. So you can see all of the different types of hardware and solutions we have available, and these are available in our Advisix Solutions Center. We can do these on-site, or we can do these at your location. As long as we can get a secure VPN connection, a lot of the demonstrations we can do at your site. We can help you with pilots. So it's always good to walk before you run. We could come in and work with you to set up the vCloud suite, understand how to manage resource pools, create your provider VDCs and your organizational VDCs, set up the orchestration for that so that you don't have a recipe of failure. And last, we also have Advisix advisors, and we have a cloud advisor. And what we'll do is we'll come up with a SWOT worksheet that tells you about your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and your threats, the heat maps of where you are compared to other people in your industry, and also work with you on a roadmap of where you should be going. This is very much like the type of solution that you'd find from a Gartner for strategic planning. And that's all. Thank you for coming.